It is difficult to take seriously the four so-called tort reform bills passed recently by the House and last Wednesday by the Senate. No one from the Senate or the House contacted me or my staff. I'm told there was also little, if any, communications or collaboration with Senate DFLers, and the House rejected over 20 amendments DFL amendments that would have moderated these bills. There also appears to be little or no communication and collaboration with the judicial leaders of Minnesota's courts. Thus, it is hard for me to believe that this rush-it-to-pass-it strategy had any expectation of creating laws. Instead, it appears to be just another political ploy by the Republican majorities as they provide their special interest friends, the rich and the powerful, with more favoritism and favors at the expense of most other Minnesotans. These bills are laughably referred to as, quote, jobs bills, close quote. Well, calling a crow a swan doesn't make it one. These bills' impact on job creation in Minnesota would be negligible. The real impact would be to reduce the rights of law-abiding citizens and businesses to seek justice from the wrongdoing of others. The cost of Minnesota citizens and small businesses, they estimate at $500 million. They call that job creation. I call it padding the bottom line of mostly out-of-state large insurance companies. Republicans in the legislature, inexplicably, in these instances, are siding with the wrongdoers. Well, I'm taking the side of law-abiding Minnesota citizens and businesses by vetoing all four of them. What is significant about this bill, what is also significant about these bills is how frequently they disregard the findings and views of the Minnesota Supreme Court's designated committees. One of the measures, Senate File 429, would change the process for settlements under Rule 68 of the Minnesota Rules of Civil Procedure. I'm told that the Minnesota Supreme Court Rules Committee thoroughly reviewed and rejected the changes proposed to this bill in 2008. The Supreme Court Task Force on Civil Justice again rejected this change in its December 2011 report. In addition, the Minnesota Supreme Court Civil Justice Task Force recently rejected the change in conciliation court claim levels contained in Section 1 of Senate File 149 because it would not have a significant impact on the court's workloads. Additionally, the Supreme Court's task force did not recommend the change in consumer credit cases in this bill. The legislature has completely ignored the findings of the courts. So exactly who did the Republicans in the legislature listen to? Well, 3 of the 4 bills come right from this manual, Tort Reform Boot Camp, published by the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. This is the same group who reportedly provided legislators last week with all expense-paid trips to a posh Florida hotel for what they call an education policy conference. It is an extremely conservative group funded largely by large corporations, big business associations, insurance companies, and very wealthy individuals. Well, I've found that Minnesotans do not want their laws written by the lobbyists of big corporations. Since these Republican bills so closely follow ALEC's instructions on tort reform, and since ALEC's opinion on these subjects are evidently more important to Republican legislators than mine, their fellow DFL legislators, or the Minnesota Supreme Courts, perhaps they would share with us all of the other ALEC boot camp manuals so we can know in advance what to expect from them for the rest of this session. If Republicans want to continue to prove to Minnesotans that they are too extreme to lead, they should continue to throw ALEC's ideology at us. If they want to begin to govern responsibly and work collaboratively to pass real jobs legislation, and my 3 measures have not even been taken up, real jobs legislation that will put Minnesotans back to work, then I'm ready to work with them, and I'm waiting. I'm glad to respond to questions on this subject first, and then I'll take the questions on anything else. Where's Michelle? Have they been introduced? Yep. So we have the bonding bill, we have the tax credit for jobs now, and then the stadium.
Republicans on that, on these three bills?
Well, the bonding bill is understood. I put in my recommendations with the understanding expectations that they're going to add in their own, but I'm urging them to pass the bill this month so that we can get people to work later this spring rather than wait till the end of the session and play those kind of games with it.
Them for not working with you on their bill. Have you worked with them on your bill?
This is the beginning of the process. They're sending me bills at the end of the process. And we'll certainly work with them. We work with them all the time on bills. I have to work with them. They're in the majority, so I mean that's just common practice here. But you get 4 bills, in the third week without a single jobs bill passed, and have this be laughably characterized as a jobs bill, and it's just a sop to the large insurance industry. It's not going to benefit average Minnesotans. It's not going to benefit most Minnesota's small businesses. It's just absolutely a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Are you saying that this proves you are unwilling to work with Republicans this session and you just are trying to help DFLers take over both chambers?
I guess, again, no one from the Senate or the House contacted my staff or myself on any of these measures. They just passed them and sent them right to me. I don't consider that to be cooperation, and certainly not collaboration. And as I said, evidently they didn't really even care what the Minnesota Supreme Court's and its task forces recommended as well. So, what's driving that ship is something somebody else will have to answer to. It's not but it's not the best interest of the people of Minnesota.
Does your action here, Governor, maybe perhaps the first step in drawing some clear differences between Democrats and Republicans for the upcoming election?
Well, as I said in my statement, they're backing the wrongdoers here, the big corporations and their bottom lines, and I'm backing, and many of the DFL amendments were rejected, are backing the citizens of Minnesota, individuals and small businesses that have been wronged by somebody. And we're talking about situations where somebody, has been wronged by somebody else or some other organization or institution, and is looking for a measure of justice. And Minnesota's system has worked quite well. I mean, again, the Minnesota or the Chamber of Commerce analysis is, that we're one of the top states in terms of how we treat businesses in the litigation process. Our number of lawsuits has dropped, was it 40% since 1997? Is that right? What is it? 40% since 19. It's in one of my veto letters. What is it, Erin?
44% since 1997.
I can't hear you.
44% since 97.
So the number of lawsuits.
Yes.
Help me out here, please.
Okay.
No, just tell me what it says.
I believe it's 47% since 1997.
Of what?
The number of civil cases has been reduced.
Okay. Got that? Number of civil cases in Minnesota that has been reduced by 47% since 1997. And that's what happens when your dog gets you up at 4:30 in the morning.
They are particularly harsh about the Republicans. Are you emboldened by recent poll numbers that show you with approval from 50% and then with approval at under 20%?
I'm glad to see them for myself, and but I've always said a good poll is like good perfume. It's all right to take a whiff of it, but if you swallow it, you're in trouble. So it's just keep on doing what I believe is right for the people of Minnesota, and I'm very gratified and honored that they, in the majority, recognize that that's what I'm doing.
And as a follow-up to that, how can you possibly think that you will work together with them on something as divisive as a Vikings stadium if you say the words you said today?
Well, the Viking Stadium is not about Mark Dayton. It's about the people of Minnesota. It's about several thousand people who would be working for 3 years to build it, and several thousand people would be working thereafter to operate it. If the legislators can't see what's the benefit to Minnesota, to our state, our economic and social vitality, to our future, you know, I'm not relevant to that. I should not be relevant to that consideration. It should be about what's best for Minnesota.
But perhaps do you think that the language, you know, what you were saying before, unfit to govern, do you think that that in any way hurts just the tone of the conversation?
Well, again, I believe that they've set the tone. I mean, they're the ones who passed these 4 bills without any consultation and are sending them to me now in the 3rd week of the session when I haven't seen a single jobs bill. I've seen anything to do with incentives to hire people. And there's stories today about the young people getting out of college who are having a hard time. So you get finding jobs. So, you know, I mean, if there's a better idea than my jobs now tax credit, then fine. Let's deal with it. But, you know, I haven't seen that discussed on the Senate or House floor yet, much less come to me for signature. And I'll sign a jobs bill if it's bipartisan or we're working cooperatively together. And I, once again, call on the Republican leaders to do so. Let's sit down together and let's talk over jobs legislation and let's come to agreement and take their best ideas and our best ideas and put them to work for Minnesota.
Governor, do you think this is an example of why the legislature's approval rating is at 17%?
Well, I'll let my comments stand on their own, and you know, Minnesotans will pass judgment on their performance.
The things you've told us today, have you told Republican leaders, like you want collaboration, you want to sit down and talk about
I sat at your event the Thursday before the session started, and boy, that's sure what I heard. You know, I heard all conciliation and cooperation, and you know, it's going to be a good session. And then beginning of the first day of the session, you know, the Senate's family, and you know, and so I certainly heard that. And again, I had one meeting, breakfast meeting. We set them up for every other week with the Republican legislative leaders. So we had it a week ago, not this week, but last week, and you know, certainly made the case. Actually, that was in the morning before they took up Ellen Anderson's confirmation. So I said that I told them that would have a very detrimental effect to our working relationship, because it would mean to me that I couldn't trust their word that they want a cooperative conciliatory session. And no, it appears they don't. And look at what else is cooking up there: constitutional amendments and gun bills, and anti-union bills and lawsuits to prevent anything, from even happening, but they're passing legislation to prevent something that they were in court to prevent. I mean, it's just, you look at it and you say, what's driving this? It's not about what's important to the people of Minnesota. It's not about what's best for the 175,000 Minnesotans who are looking for work. It's about something else, so you can speculate as to what that is.
You took umbrage when a lawmaker accused you of taking clues from your contributors. You're essentially taking clues from your contributors when Senator Perry wrote that in a fundraising email regarding your daycare decision. You're taking aim at them for taking clues from ALEC. What's wrong with that?
So, clues, you mean like direction?
Direction.
Okay. Well, again, I have to look at the content of the legislation and who benefits from it. All I have said about child care providers is they ought to have the right to decide for themselves in a fair election whether they want to form a union or not. To me, that's very much mainstream America, at least it used to be. And again, I would say evaluate their legislation and that came from ALEC based on who gains and who loses according to it. That's how it should be evaluated. And the fact is, this group is pushing this legislation, these same 4 measures, all over the country, and they're very upfront about doing it. I mean, their mission statement says, they're promoting the individual freedom or else, it says very conservative. So, they're not hiding anything. It's just that's what's coming out of it, and that's what seems to be driving them.
Governor, will these early session disagreements affect the tone of your State of the State next week, or do you plan to go in a different direction?
Well, stay tuned. It's still in the drafting stage. So.
Governor, the House Tax Committee next week is scheduled to take up what Republicans are calling a major job creation bill, which would phase out the state levy, property tax levy on businesses. What's your view of that general idea?
Well, I'm not sure it's, I don't know how they propose to pay for it. It's one of anything that you do that starts small and then is going to take off in later years, leaving future governors and future legislators with the burden of balancing the budget is problematic unless there's strong reason to do it. And I'm not sure that the statewide business property tax, which was put in, I guess, under Governor Ventura, and the business community applauded it as a substitute for other property taxes they were paying for the schools. So the idea was they were going to pay into the state for the benefit of all of our schools, and now they don't want to, or somebody doesn't want to do that anymore. So I have to weigh it in balance with others, find out what the cost is. I believe the estimate the Department of Revenue put forth for a 12-year phase-out was about $9 billion in lost revenue for the state over those 12 years. If that money is lost, I mean, either you're talking about more draconian cuts and I think this is the case, you're talking about increased property taxes for citizens, for homeowners, and for small businesses. I mean, I would bet that for a lot of the small businesses in Main Street, Minnesota, who don't have a lot of property, that whatever reduction they got from the phase out of the statewide property tax would be more than offset by an increase in their local property taxes, resulting with cutbacks in local government aids and the loss of revenue.
Governor, have you heard anything from Ramsey County about a new financing plan for their stadium proposal, or where does that whole issue stand right now? It seems like it's been kind of quiet recently.
I haven't heard anything, but I will at 10 o'clock this morning when Commissioner Ortega comes in. He asked for a meeting, so we're meeting. So
Have they given you any hint what they might have?
all I know really is what I've read in the news media about it. So
what do you think about what you read?
well, I give them a lot of credit. We're switching now subject, so if I give Ramsey County a lot of credit, they and Arden Hills Mayor and Council, they have been straightforward from the beginning, and they put forward a solid financial proposal, and it involved raising a county tax, and the legislature, the majority, felt that had to have a voter referendum, and there's certainly justification for that. And that precluded that, and then it precluded the hospitality or food and beverage tax increase. So I don't know the details of this next one, what they're proposing to do, but they've been consistent throughout, in marked contrast to Minneapolis, where you got, can't even get a letter from the city council that a majority of them support the project, and they all sit in the sidelines and carp about everything and trash everything. And Mayor Ryback and Council President Barb Johnson, made a tremendous effort to pull it together, and they just 7 members of the council just really don't have, at least in my view, the proper perspective on what's best for all of Minneapolis.
At this point, how optimistic are you? What would you put the chances of something passing?
If I had that kind of crystal ball, I'll tell you, I'd be doing lots of things with it. I can't say right now. We're just trying to set up a conference call with Representative Lanning and Senator Rosen to get their assessment of the situation. But as these, the longer we go without a specific financing plan that everybody's agreed to, it doesn't change from one day to the next. I mean, and there are a lot of legislators, I'm told, who would rather avoid having to take a tough vote on the stadium for or against until next year. And so, the failure of the parties to come to a final resolution and stand on that and take that to the legislature and bill for them, I mean, it's just making it easy for people who don't want to deal with it anyway.
Is it impossible to go forward on Minneapolis with absent a letter from the council?
Well, we met with the city leaders and at least 3 weeks ago now, and I could get the exact date, and they were asked for if not a vote of the city council in support, at least a letter in support. And we're told that was essential to having the assurance that Minneapolis was behind this the necessary city support. Now, again, the mayor's done his best to do that. They've had rallies, they've had the business community and labor community talk to the 7 who are not willing to support it, but at this point, there's still no letter. So, I mean, again, I understand now why the Vikings decided, enough of Minneapolis. We're going to Arden Hills. I mean, Arden Hills wants them. Arden Hills, Ramsey County, as I say, have been straightforward and consistent, and have put together, sound financing proposals. And, we're still just on this merry-go-round with 7 members of the Minneapolis City Council.
They will say that, they continue to say that the plan is not a good plan, and that's why they're objecting to it, at least, some of the ones who favor the idea of the stadium are open to it.
Well, then it's incumbent on them to come up with a plan to make it better. I mean, they're all intelligent people. They understand the city's financing capabilities and limitations. I mean, let them come up with something. I mean, there's so many people here in this building and over in Minneapolis who just want to sit on the sidelines and just take pot shots at it. Well, okay, they're going to, if they destroy the proposal and continue to do that, well, then they can explain to the people of Minnesota why they're having to root for the Los Angeles Vikings.
Have you had an opportunity to look at the Duluth plan at all? Is that
Which?
The Duluth stadium idea?
No, I haven't looked at that one yet, nor the Egan one.
Governor, the Vikings organization seems to believe that you were had the most to do with ruling out the Linden Avenue so-called Basilica site. Would you take that credit for being the person that put that off the table?
Well, I think it just became clear to me that it wasn't going to get anywhere in this legislative session with the strong opposition of Father Bauer and the church. So, I haven't found anybody over here who disputes that assessment. So I think that the reality of the situation is what, caused that to occur. And, I think I just sort of read the writing on the wall and then articulated it.
Governor, you just referenced Los Angeles a minute ago. Didn't the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell pretty much take that off the table? Is there actually no leverage the Vikings have right now to move? And hasn't that taken out any urgency to do something this session?
Well, the urgency is to put thousands of Minnesotans to work. I mean, I've always said this is first and foremost a jobs bill. And secondly is building a people's stadium that will serve a variety of needs. And third is to keep the Vikings here in Minnesota. I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I've seen different versions of what Commissioner Goodell said, and the actual transcript. I read a selected transcript of his remarks, but the parts that pertain to the stadium situation, and they're I think probably intentionally fairly ambiguous so that anything can happen. I'm not saying the Vikings are going to leave next month or next year. I don't know, but I do know from my experience watching sports for all my life, and that teams don't get a reasonable resolution to a new stadium need, they move. That's why we have the Arizona Cardinals. That's why we have the St. Louis Rams. That's why we have the Indianapolis Colts. So that in the real world of pro sport franchises, teams move or they sell to somebody else who will move. And I think we want to play Russian roulette and try to see how long that it's going to take for that to happen in Minnesota. I think that's a very foolish gambit.
Earlier you said that you didn't want to set another deadline, but from a realistic standpoint, what's the latest that you can have a bill going through committee or whatever?
I'd really defer to Senator Rosen and Representative Landing on that. I mean, that's really the decision they would make in consultation with the leadership on both sides. I mean, that's really their purview, and it's their prerogative to set whatever appropriate deadlines they believe are appropriate.
Thank you.
If it goes after the February forecast, but if it goes after mid-March, is that too late to get?
Again, well, I've learned in my 14 legislative sessions here that nothing's too late. Even midnight on, you just throw the cloak over the clock. But
the Duluth Stadium proposal was really kind of a way to move the Sunday liquor sales forward. Would you consider, Sunday liquor sales as a stadium?
I haven't looked at it. I haven't considered it. I haven't heard the pros and cons. And
have you taken a stand on Sunday liquor sales?
No, I haven't.
Would you like to
Thank
take
you.
one now?